Hey 190 surf enthusiasts, welcome back. As you can see, we're back in the garage office this week because the outside office is currently getting dominated with high-pitched gale force winds, rain, and now tornadoes. I mean, what the hell? Like quarantine was enough. Now we need tornadoes. Phew, man, I mean, things are getting weird around here. Last night after Easter dinner, my wife asked me if I could clear the table. I was like, here, hold my beer. I needed a run up, but I made it. Clear the. Anyway, this week, you've got something that kind of is near and dear to my heart, so you'll have to forgive me if I sort of geeked out a little bit as I included the readings for the week. But I think you'll find them relatively connected and pretty accessible. And while it's going to look like a lot, and we'll look at it in a second, you actually don't have to engage with all that much, considering that this video is late in coming out with the long weekend, and you've got your character anthologies due. We'll look at that too in the video as we go through the screenshot. Don't forget about those. Those are due in the middle of next week, with which you'll still have other assignments going on. So start chipping away at that thing, right? Don't wait until the last minute to do it, otherwise you'll be miserable, right? So we'll take a look at both of those next.
I think old Jack speaks for all of us this week. But time waits for no man, and it waits neither for us. So we must pick our heads up out of our watermelons and carry on. And so we shall. Let's take a look at your actual assignments. Okay, let's start with where you're actually going to submit your response, because that'll help eliminate some of the rest of this stuff. In your weekly response this week, you need to address the core chapter, your choice of scholarship highlights based on abstracts alone, though you can read as far as you like, 3 works of journalism, one must be from George, and your choice of mixed media, right? A single choice. You can address these in any order that you like, and however you see them connected. You might hate them, love them, but it's your interests and your connections and your reflections on and how you sort of group these together in your response. Let's look at your choices. You need the core chapter, which is this one, Westwick and Neuschel's Beating the Crowds. It looks at the rise of localism, the Dahui, the Bra Boys, the Silver Bay Surfers, and a few others, as well as an engaging and insightful little read into the development of surf travel, that wanderlust and idyllic paradise that surfing promises us, and sort of the problems that arise with that promise. Right? Then, as you noted in the little response, you need to engage with the abstracts, right? In general, right? So the best thing that I can suggest is to go through and read each abstract. Abstracts, in case you don't know, are the golden key to gaining a conference paper or attending a conference for those of you still engaging in your undergrad, and those getting ready to move on towards more graduate study. Same thing. It's how you get published, how you get accepted. Right, the abstract is usually a tight little feature, a 500, maybe 600 word at the most, condensed version of what is in the rest of the entire article. Right, you usually write this first, pitch it to them. They say, "Hey, that's great. We'll publish it. Here's some money," and then you actually have to write it. So go through. This one's from Lindsay Usher of Penn State, and she looks at localism and the rise of surf tourism on the Pacific coast of Nicaragua, a current hotspot for surf tourism development, or at least it was until the country erupted into political demonstration and riot, and that sort of cooled off travel a little bit. Yet, it has not died entirely. So, what you need to do is read the abstract for each of these, right? You're talking at the most a total of a couple of paragraphs for each, right? So just read each of them. This is actually a surf tourism review of literature. You don't necessarily need it. It does sort of give you the framework in its abstract for this sort of study and academic inquiry, what it looks like to actually engage in this stuff, right? What does an English major do? Well, it's not just literature and teaching English, but you can get into things like sustainable tourism, market research, journal of travel research, coastal research, sport and tourism, right? There's all kinds of ways in which to take the study of the humanities. And this is just those collected around surfing. Right? So you need this in its entirety, a set of observations about these abstracts, right? In general, you don't have to refer to every single one, but rather read the abstracts and then sort of decide, okay, out of the abstracts, what are the points that I find the most engaging and interesting? How might they connect to these other things that I have to respond to, right? You don't need every single one, rather read them all and then sort of just address the most interesting points that arise out of each or out of them in general. Under journalism, I've told you you need 3 pieces of journalism and you've got 4 to choose from. One must be from Sam George. He is sort of the godfather, if you will, of surf industry journalism, right? He gives rise to the Surfer's Journal and sort of this long form look at serious writing about surfing in an activity that is not quite so serious. Especially if you read Sam Warsaw's introduction to Chas Smith, it's a ridiculous use of our time, yet it seems so important. Sam George has 2 articles here, the Surf Tradition of Sao Tome and the Lost Boys of Lakey Peak. You must choose one of those 2. You can do them both, but you only need one. Sam George is a bit of an acquired taste. He's not my favorite, but he is sort of, a founding voice in the industry. So deal with him we shall. As you read his article, I've given you points of interest for your response. Note, you do not need to address all of these questions or even answer them all if you have other interests. You can even ignore them entirely. These are just meant to be a guide. How do I read this article that is otherwise about this cool place in a way beyond just looking at it as an article about a cool place? So I've asked you some questions to get you thinking that way, right? What is George doing throughout this article that sort of might be problematic or worth further inquiry? So these are just points to consider as you address it if you were to choose this one. I've given you same thing for his other article, The Lost Boys of Lakey Peak. Again, you don't have to answer every single one, nor do you even have to answer them at all. It's just a way to think about this article beyond, well, this is about a bunch of boys from Thailand. Okay. There's also a sort of multimedia. It's from the archives at the Surfer's Journal from Kimball Taylor. And the spot is about an actual surf spot that is listed in the scholarship by Aotearoa. This is the place he's talking about. This place is now loaded with little boutique hotels, right, in each of these little spots, and kind of what happens when you do this, right? So his is one to look at. And the last is a guy whose name that you probably know pretty well by now, and it's Weisbecker, and his look at Pavones, Costa Rica, and the resulting squatters' rights war and eventual murder of American Max Dalton over really the development of this surf community down at the edge of the country in Pavones on the Pacific side. So out of the journalism, you've got to choose 3. You could read both Georges and Taylor, or both Georges and Weisbecker. You could read one George, one Taylor, one Weisbecker. You need 3. Doesn't matter which 3. Next would be mixed media. Of the mixed media, choose any one. I've given you a quick Surfline article about the protests that erupted in Nicaragua at the same time as the surf camps are trying to conduct and continue business, largely expat-owned surf camps. I've given you a quick little article from the New York Times about the development of Santa Teresa, a town that is no longer identifiable itself. It is actually now so connected to Malpais with development that it's unbelievable to even imagine it as a place that once looked like it used to. Gisele Bündchen and Tom Brady own a house there. Excuse me. You've also got some of the Surfer's Journal from last week in the Visions. This has the pictures in the middle of the development of Bali. This is the trailer to the Bra Boys film, narrated by Russell Crowe. and it's a look at the Bra Boys and the murder actually of a local there in Sydney in the rise of this sort of tight knit group. And it kind of sort of it gives you another look at the Bra Boys rather than just their violence. The Black Shorts is a trailer for a documentary about Dahui, those guys that sort of chased Rick Kane out of the water in the North Shore. Yeah, they're real. Their current manifestation is what's known as the Wolf Pack, right? And Kamale Alexander is sort of their de facto leader. You've got two views of the Wolf Pack to look at if you want. One is from Kamale himself, and the other is sort of the New York Times report on it. They begin with the Dahui and then they move to the current Wolf Pack. It's an interesting study in history and media, really. How are these things talked about depending on who it is and where it's from, right? This was a winner of multiple Sundance Awards and all kinds of independent documentary awards. It's a good film. If you're interested, the entire thing is available on YouTube. You can check it out. It's worth a watch. It's much less surfing than you might think. Okay, that about does it. You've got your core chapter, the abstracts or items of the abstracts that you find interesting from scholarship, 3 articles of journalism, 1 must be a George article, and 1 choice of some things from mixed media. Then submit your response. Digital character anthology still out here, and it's coming in on April 22nd, right? Here's what to do, right? We've gone over this in person in class, so I won't spend a lot of time doing it here, except to say if you have questions about this and what counts as a character, or who you could use, or what any of this means, please email and I'm happy to try to clear it up for you personally. Okay, that's about it.
Okay, you've seen the readings and the multimedia stuff for the week, and you know where to put the response. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out and ask. I would love to be able to help and answer anything that you're concerned about. As far as character anthologies go, don't forget about those. Start amassing who and what you want and getting them together. Tick it off a little bit at a time so that next week doesn't become too overloaded. That's about it. Try and stay sane out there. I hope, things move along relatively easy for you and that you're all safe and well. Last bit of going away advice in this day of ever-present and ever-changing online internet market economy: don't buy anything Velcro. It's a ripoff. See you next week.